Guys, today we're putting it all together, your entire immune system, front to back, bouncers to snipers, mucus to memory cells. Whether it's your innate immunity throwing that first punch, your adaptive immunity launching antibodies like confetti, or cell-mediated immunity rolling in like a tactical SWAT with no chill, your immune system is the full package. So grab your notes, grab your tea, and let's break down how your body becomes its own personal action movie. Let's get started. Right now, you are covered in bacteria like staph, strep, and E. coli, and these guys aren't here just for a casual visit. Oh no, they are here trying to squat on your body rent-free, steal your nutrients, and multiply like it's spring break in Cancun. But here's the thing, your body is nobody's free Airbnb, and these intruders are about to catch these immune system hands. Your innate immune system has a 3-tier security system to deal with these party crashers. Number 1, we have our front desk security known as our innate external barriers. This is our first line of defense, keeping shady folks out. This consists of your skin and your mucous membranes. Then we have our security guards, and that's our innate internal barriers. If by chance these intruders were able to sneak in, these bad boys are going to take them out. We're talking phagocytes, NK cells, inflammation, and fever. And if all else fails, we have our SWAT team known as our adaptive specific system. These are the big guns. They train, they strategize, and they hold grudges the next time they come in contact with an invader. Before germs can get inside and start a biological house party, your body has bouncers in place at every entrance checking IDs and kicking out troublemakers. This is your first line of defense known as your skin and your mucous membranes. So your skin is like the Fort Knox of your immune system. It's tough. It's waterproof, and it's so elite at keeping invaders out that you could probably swim in a vat of expired nacho cheese from a gas station and still be okay. But I don't recommend that at all. This powerhouse barrier is keratinized, meaning that it is a tough protein armor that makes it hard for invaders to break into. As long as your epidermis remains intact, bacteria, viruses, and fungi can pound on the door all they want, but they're not getting in. A mnemonic that I like to use to remember all of the things that the skin does for us is SKIN, because your skin is a skin, kick butt, immune nation. The S stands for sweat and sebum. Your skin is basically marinating in its own homemade germ repellent lotion, making it a straight up nightmare for bacteria trying to move in. And the K stands for keratin armor. This tough outer layer is the medieval chainmail of your immune system, blocking invaders like a full body shield. The I stands for inhospitable environment. Between our low pH, antimicrobial peptides, and Sahara level dryness, bacteria show up thinking it's a vacation, but it's really a death trap. The N stands for non-stop protection. Your skin doesn't clock out, doesn't take PTO, and it never calls in sick. It's the ultimate 24/7 bouncer of your body. But here's the question. What happens when your impenetrable fortress gets compromised? That's when the freeloaders start flooding in like college kids on an all-you-can-eat taco night. If you got a paper cut, bacteria is like open sesame. Mosquito bite? Now you're itching and you have involuntarily donated blood to an ungrateful insect. If you're shaving with a cheap razor, congratulations! Your skin just opened the door to a bacterial block party. Skin might be an A+ bodyguard, but it's not invincible. Once that barrier is broken, your immune system has to work overtime to keep infections from turning you into its own walking petri dish. So what about those mucous membranes? Your mucous membranes are the covert ops security covering every sneaky opening where germs try to break in. Your nose, your mouth, lungs, digestive system, urinary tract, and your reproductive tract. Basically, any hole you have in your body, invaders are going to try to sneak in. One of the things that the mucous membranes produce is mucus. So you can think of mucus as a nightclub bouncer with a clipboard. If germs are not on that list, they're not getting in. What it's going to do is it's going to trap, isolate, and eliminate bad guys before they cause any trouble. Think about it, right? If your coworker sneezes in your direction, your nasal mucus is going to catch those airborne invaders before they enter your body. If for some reason you eat a 3-day-old pizza slice, don't ask me how I know this, but your stomach acid is going to immediately become the terminator and it's going to melt that bacteria like butter on a hot skillet. Your mucous membranes don't just block microbes, they actively fight back with built-in chemical weapons. One of these weapons is your tears and your saliva. They're packed with lysosomes, enzymes that help us break down bacteria cell walls fast. We also have this thing called defensins. So defensins are actually found on your skin and your membranes, and they're these tiny little angry peptides that stab bacteria and fungal invaders before they can set up shop. If these mucus defense forces are unable to handle the sheer amount of volume of invaders that are coming into your body's up for ante. So a bacteria thug slipped past your first line of defenses. Your immune system takes 0 chances. So the moment that invader crosses that line, the body's going to start ringing those emergency alarm systems and letting the security team know that there's been a break. First up, we have our phagocytes, which are the hungry Pac-Man of our immunity system. Think of these guys as the cellular garbage disposals on steroids. These guys have one job only. It's to find, attack, and eat anything that doesn't belong in your body. That could be bacteria, viruses, dead cells, even random debris. So basically, they're like the janitors of justice, cleaning up crime scenes before things get out of control. So first up, we have our neutrophils. That's the EMS system, our first responders of the immune system. Whenever there's a break, they are going to be the first ones rolling up, sirens blazing whenever there's trouble. So neutrophils are produced nonstop in our bone marrow, and they're always on standby in our bloodstream, ready to deploy at a moment's notice. The second that your skin barrier is breached, chemical distress signals from our cytokines are going to advise everybody that we need to get more neutrophils to this crime scene. Once those neutrophils are there, they're going to trap and engulf all of that bacteria through a process called phagocytosis. They release deadly enzymes and toxic chemicals to obliterate the invaders. But here's the catch. Something really cool about neutrophils is that neutrophils are our warriors. But after they eat and they attack, what they do is they actually self-destruct. And they ultimately turn into pus. Yes, that gunky, white, yellow stuff in our infected wounds, those are our fallen neutrophil soldiers. So if you want a good memory trick, the way I like to remember neutrophils is neutrophils equals now, because they're the first to show up and die really quickly. Our next bad boy that's been invited to the party is our macrophages. They are our cleanup crew. So once those neutrophils wreak havoc and then ultimately die dramatically, these macrophages are going to roll up like seasoned veterans cleaning up after those rookies. Unlike neutrophils, macrophages don't self-destruct after one meal. They're going to continue eating and munching on all those invaders like it's a never-ending buffet. A memory trick that I like to use for macrophages is macrophages equals maintenance, because they handle that long-term cleanup and that continued defense. So you might be wondering, how does this whole eating bacteria thing work? Let's zoom in on the macrophages in action. Step 1 is we have detection. Those macrophages are going to recognize the invader by spotting foreign proteins known as antigens on the microbe surface. Step 2 is we're going to capture. So the macrophages are going to extend these little cytoplasmic arms and grab the bacteria like a claw machine. Step 3 is we're going to have engulfment. Those macrophages are going to completely surround that bacteria and swallow it up in a bubble-like sac called a phagosome. In step 4, we have destruction. The phagosomes are going to fuse with lysosomes that are packed with delicious digestive enzymes, and they're ultimately going to work together to dissolve the bacteria. So here's a bonus fact. Macrophages don't just eat and destroy, they also alert our adaptive immune system by presenting the antigens that they got from that bacteria and providing it to helper T cells. They're basically tattletales. They're going to tell the adaptive immune system exactly who that enemy is, and they're going to launch an even bigger attack the next time that they come in contact with it. Next up, we're going to talk about the security guards of our immune system, our second line of defense, and we're going to be starting with our natural killer cells. These natural killer cells are the bad boys that don't play. While phagocytes might be out there gobbling up intruders, natural killer cells are operating like undercover assassins. They're hunting down treacherous body cells that have turned against the system, whether they're an infected virus or have gone rogue like cancer cells. A mnemonic that I like to remember for natural killer cells is NK means no kindness. They will kill their own if necessary. So how does these natural killer cells sniff out traitors? Step 1 is they're going to identify the target. Healthy cells have a very specific protein found on their surface. It's called MHC1, Major Histocompatibility Complex Class 1. It's basically an ID badge that says, relax, I'm one of the good guys, don't attack me. Step 2 is it's going to want to start spotting red flags. Some cells stop producing that MHC1 when they're infected with a virus or they turn cancerous. This is like a bank employee suddenly refusing to show their badge to security. Once this happens, step 3 is going to kick in and it's full-on assassination mode. If an NK cell finds a cell without that MHC1 badge, it does not hesitate. Instead of swallowing up like a phagocyte, it's actually going to deliver a very precise precision kill by injecting it with toxic proteins. And then lastly, step 4 is triggering apoptosis. NK cells use 2 main weapons. Number 1 is they have porphyrin, which pokes holes into the target cell's membrane, creating entry points for the deadly enzymes. And then step 2 is our granzymes. They slip inside the cell, triggering that cell to self-destruct. That infected or cancerous cell should then shrivel up and ultimately die, quietly, efficiently, and 0 collateral damage. So I want you to imagine this. You're walking through your kitchen in the middle of the night, half asleep and craving a snack. But instead of gracefully grabbing that leftover slice of pizza, bam! You stub your toe in the corner of the fridge. Congratulations, you have just triggered an inflammatory response. Your immune system doesn't care that this was an accident. As far as your body's concerned, there is a full-scale security breach and it's all launched DEFCON 1. So step 1 of inflammation is your body is going to trigger the emergency alarm. When your skin barrier gets compromised, whether through a stub toe or paper cut, your immune system is going to immediately jump into action. Mast cells, which is our immune cells chilling in our tissues, are going to detect that there's been damage and they're going to start screaming like a fire alarm by releasing histamine. Histamine is going to signal your blood vessels to open up, also known as vasodilation, so that more immune troops can rush to the scene. So what's the purpose? What is our goal by causing this reaction? It's to contain damage, fight those invading bacteria, and start the repair process. Step 2 is we're going to start to see the classic signs of inflammation. First up, you're going to start to see redness and heat. Blood vessels are going to widen like we talked about before with the histamine. They're going to vasodilate, and this is going to bring in more white blood cells, nutrients, and oxygen to help clean up our mess. And then what are we going to see next? We're going to start seeing swelling and that edema, baby. Those blood vessels are going to get leaky. They're going to release plasma, clotting factors, and proteins into that area to trap bacteria and prevent infection from spreading. And the very last thing, of course, we all know it well, is we're going to start to see a little bit of pain. That swelling is ultimately going to start pressing down on our nerve endings, and your immune system is going to start flooding that area with something known as prostaglandins, which is an inflammatory chemical, making the site super hypersensitive. Here's the deal, pain is not your enemy. It's the message your body is screaming to say, chill. Let me heal. So if you want to study or want a study tip when it comes to specifically these signs of inflammation, I like to think of HIT, which is heat, inflammation, and throbbing. So once we see those classic signs with inflammation, we're going to go to step 3 and our white blood cells are going to start to arrive. Once histamine opens up the floodgates, your immune soldiers are going to start to arrive for backup to this crime scene. Neutrophils are going to be our first responders, of course. They're going to charge in, gobble up bacteria, and die dramatically, forming pus. Macrophages, which is our cleanup crew, are going to eat the leftovers, clear up all those dead cells, and call for reinforcements. And then lastly, platelets and clotting factors are our construction team. They are going to patch up broken blood vessels, heal the wound, and start the healing process. At this point, your body is basically running a full-scale military operation to contain the damage, eliminate the threats, and repair the battlefield. So sometimes things can get a little out of hand. Enter that good old bad boy, fever. If that infection starts spreading and your immune system realizes that local inflammation isn't enough, it pulls out the nuclear option known as fever. What happens is our white blood cells, they're going to release something known as pyrogens. These are going to travel to your hypothalamus and let your hypothalamus know that we need to start turning up the heat. So why do we do this? Why do we have to have a fever and turn up the heat? Because bacteria hates heat. One of the things that heat and fever is going to do is it's going to start speeding up healing. Higher temperatures is going to increase cellular metabolism, meaning your immune cells are going to work faster and they're going to work stronger. This is also going to cause starvation to the bacteria because your liver and your spleen hold on to iron and zinc, which bacteria need to multiply. No iron equals no bacterial party. And what is the most important thing when it comes to fever? What does it make you do? It makes you rest. If you have ever felt exhausted when you have a fever, it's your body's way of forcing you to stay in bed so that you can heal. Remember, fever's not always a bad thing. It's cooking the bad guys. But sometimes the enemy can be bigger, badder, and way more persistent, the kind that won't go down without a fight. That's when your body calls in the elite special forces known as your adaptive immune system. They are trained, they're precise, and they are ready to launch a full counterattack. Do you want to see how your immune system levels up to boss mode? Stick around for the next round where we're going to be diving further into the adaptive immune system. Now let's test the knowledge of everything that you've learned. So listen up, besties. If your innate immune system is your body's security guards and emergency responders, then your adaptive immune system is the highly trained elite military force. Just like in video games, military strategy, or your nosy on at Thanksgiving, the key to winning a battle is knowing your enemy. So let's break down exactly how your adaptive immune system gets to know pathogens, fights back, and remembers them for life. So every war needs a strategy, and before your adaptive immune system can launch a full-on attack, it first has to figure out exactly who the enemy is. Your immune system just isn't out here swinging blindly at everything. It has rules with what counts as a threat. If these rules weren't in place, you'd end up attacking your own body every single time you ate a peanut butter sandwich. And by the way, this is exactly what happens in autoimmune diseases. But that's a whole nother topic for another day. So we start with, what exactly is an antigen? An antigen is anything that doesn't belong in your body. It could be bacteria, viruses, fungi, toxins, and even rogue cells that used to be part of our body and have now gone full supervillain, also known as cancer cells. The immune system treats antigens like an embarrassing text that you sent at 2 o'clock in the morning. You will never forget this, and we will hold it against you forever. Basically, if an antigen enters your body, your immune system immediately wants to know who it is, what it's doing there, and whether it needs to be taken down. Now, let's say that a flu virus wants to sneak into your body like a sketchy dude trying to sneak backstage during a concert. Before it can find a host cell and multiply inside of it, it's going to run into one of your immune system's best detectives, known as B lymphocytes or B cells. B cells are made in our bone marrow and they also mature there. I like to think of it as B for bone marrow so it's easy to remember. They have 10,000 plus membrane-bound antibodies on their surface. Each one has a unique key looking for a matching lock known as an antigen. Now here's the deal. B cells don't just randomly attack. Instead, they roam your bloodstream, your lymph, and your tissues like mall security on a Segway, patrolling for any trouble. If for some reason that flu virus was to enter your system, number one, those B cells are going to start the detection process. These B cells are constantly circulating everywhere, scanning for those antigens because they don't want to attack our own body cells. Once that B cell finally comes into contact with its perfect match, what it's going to do is it's going to bind to that antigen like a lock clicking open. And that's when your immune system hits the panic button. Once that activation occurs, this is what's going to start happening inside your body. Number one, the activated B cells are going to get a massive energy boost and they're going to start cloning themselves at warp speed. It produces thousands of identical copies, all designed to target that same antigen. Because when it comes to immune defense, one isn't enough. We're really going to need an army. These clones are then going to split into 2 different groups, each with a very specific job to do. Number one is we're going to have our effectors, known as our plasma cells, and they're like our frontline fighters. Once these guys fully mature, they turn into literal antibody factories. They're pumping out 2,000 antibodies per second. Yes, that's correct, per second. They can keep up this insane production over the course of the next 4 to 5 days before they ultimately burn out and die like a nursing student who just pulled 3 back-to-back shifts and forgot what sleep feels like. Trust me, that was me in nursing school. So what's their job? Why are they around? Their only mission is to flood the bloodstream with antibodies to mark and neutralize those antigens before they ultimately spread. These antibodies are going to bind to our invaders, making them easy targets for destruction by other immune cells. While these effector cells are out fighting for their lives, a small group of clones doesn't actually join the battle. Instead, they take a different role. They are our record keepers known as our memory B cells. What they're going to do is they're going to store the blueprint of the successful antibody that defeated the antigen. If that same pathogen dares to return inside of our body, these cells are going to jump into action immediately, skipping that whole learning process and going straight into attack mode. These guys can stick around for years, even decades in some cases. So let's have a discussion. Why is this important? The first time that you get sick, your adaptive immune system is slow to respond because it has to find the right B cell, activate it, and go through that entire cloning process. However, the second time that you get sick, your body already has those memory B cells on standby, and they immediately trigger a faster, stronger, and way more savage immune response. This is exactly the reason why you don't get chicken pox twice. Unless you're super unlucky and it turns into shingles later, don't ask me how I know that. Let's just not manifest that from happening. So let's go back to our B cells, which went full-blown manufacturing mode, cranking out tons of antibodies. You're probably wondering, what exactly are these antibodies doing? Well, here's the thing. Antibodies don't actually kill the invader themselves. Once antibodies are released into your blood, your lymph, and your interstitial fluids, they immediately start hunting for trouble. When they find that specific antigen match, they're going to lock onto it like guided missiles, getting ready to unleash a full battle attack. A way I like to remember what these antibodies do is NaOC. They neutralize, agglutinate, opsonize, and complement activation. First up, we have neutralization, also known as no touchy. I want you to imagine that there's a virus sneaking around inside of our system, but before it can actually latch onto anything, antibodies are going to swoop in and they're going to physically block the virus's binding sites, coating it completely like shrink wrap. Now the viruses can't invade, they can't spread, and they can't do anything. They're basically useless. Next up, we have agglutination, also known as stick together, and they're not going anywhere. Bacteria and viruses love to spread out and multiply like kids at a daycare center spreading germs. But antibodies have multiple binding sites, meaning that they can grab onto multiple antigens at once and clump them all together. These massive antigen antibody clumps, also known as agglutinated clumps, are too big to move. They're too big to spread infection, and they're way too easy for immune systems to find them and destroy them. Then we've got that good old opsonation known as tag. You're it. Some bacteria and viruses are sneaky and they try to blend in and go unnoticed by your immune system. But antibodies are not having that. They stick to the surface of these invaders, marking them like a big neon sign that says, "Destroy me!" Now, phagocytes like our macrophages and our neutrophils can easily swoop in, recognize the enemy, and devour them like Pac-Man. And then lastly, we have our complement activation, where we're going to start calling in those big guns. Here's the deal. Some infections are so aggressive that antibodies need to bring in reinforcements. When antibodies bind to an antigen, they trigger the complement system, which is a squad of very specialized proteins that work together to punch holes in the enemy's membrane. This literally blows up the invader from the inside out, causing it to burst. Now let's talk about how your body gains immunity, because let's be real, your immune system is out here playing the long game. There are two different ways that your immune system can become immune to an infection: your adaptive immunity and your passive immunity. I want you to think of it like this. Your adaptive immunity is like taking a self-defense class. You learn how to fight, train, and if someone tries to mess with you again, you handle your business. Whereas with the passive immunity, it's like hiring a bodyguard. You're protected while they're around, but as soon as they're leaving, you're back to that vulnerability state. So let's break it down. Your adaptive immunity is your body's way of building its own army. Your active immunity fights the infection itself, learns from the experience, and creates memory cells so that it's ready for a rematch. There's a couple different ways that it does this. First of all, we have natural active immunity. This is your body's way of saying you earned it. You catch the flu, you suffer through the symptoms, and your immune system learns the enemy's tricks. The next time you get that exact same flu, your immune system is going to recognize this enemy and it's going to shut it down before it even starts to cause problems. We also have something known as artificial active immunity, which is basically like the cheat code for your system. So instead of waiting to get sick, you can give your body a controlled preview of the enemy, and that's exactly what vaccines do. Your immune system is going to see either a weakened or dead version of the pathogen, it's going to learn its weaknesses, and it's going to build defenses before the rebattle actually begins. So here's the deal. Some infections are so deadly that you don't want to have that earned it kind of natural active immunity. Think of things like rabies, polio, tetanus. Ain't nobody out here trying to catch any of those diseases, so we want to make sure that we have vaccines so that way we can learn from these things instead of having to fight these things. And then, of course, we have our passive immunity, which is borrowing protection. Now, sometimes you don't want to have to wait for your immune system to build up its army. That's where passive immunity comes in. You can actually borrow antibodies from another source to gain immediate protection. This is also broken down in a couple different ways. We'll start with natural passive immunity. Babies get VIP passes when it comes to immunity through two things: the placenta before they're born and breast milk after they're born. These pre-made antibodies help protect newborns in the first few months while their own immune system is still kind of trying to figure it out. But here's the deal. Borrowed antibodies don't last forever. They break down over time. That's why babies eventually need to get vaccines to build up their own long-term immunity. And then, of course, we have the artificial passive immunity, which is the emergency backup plan of our immune system. Sometimes sometimes you're going to need protection as soon as possible, like when someone's exposed to rabies, snake venom, or a deadly virus. In those cases, doctors are going to inject you with a ready-made antibodies from donors who have already survived the disease. A great example of this is how Ebola patients survived. They were given antibodies from survivors while their own immune system caught up. So here's the deal. Why isn't this process permanent? Since you didn't actually make the antibodies yourself, you don't get memory cells. Once these borrowed antibodies ultimately break down and disappear, you go back to square one. So let's get one thing straight. Your immune system fights best when they're prepared. That's exactly what vaccines do. They give your immune system a cheat sheet before the real test even happens. So how do vaccines work? Let's say that a deadly virus is out there just waiting to wreak havoc on your body. If you get infected without immunity, your adaptive immune system would have to, number one, detect the threat. That's really a slow process. Number two, it's going to have to activate B cells and T cells, also a slow process. Number three, mass produce antibodies. Still slow. And number four, it takes time to actually fight back. And by the time that your body finally figures out what exactly is going on, you're miserable in bed, surrounded by tissues, binge watching Netflix, and contemplating your life choices. But what if we could actually train our immune system ahead of time? That's where vaccines come in. Instead of waiting for that real virus to ultimately attack, we give our body a practice round so that it's ready to throw hands immediately when it encounters it. There's a three-step process when it comes to vaccinations. Step one is we want to create a fake attack. A vaccine is going to introduce a harmless version of the pathogen into your body. This could be a dead virus, a weakened virus, or even just a piece of a virus, like a piece of the spike protein. The key here is that it looks like the actual thing, but it doesn't cause any disease. It's kind of like having a fake mass casualty drill. Everyone reacts as if it's real, but nobody actually gets hurt. Step two is we have our immune system boot camp. Your B cells are going to scan these harmless invaders and they're going to go through all the motions. They're going to activate, they're going to start cloning, and they're going to start making tons of antibodies. Meanwhile, those memory B cells are going to start recording everything that they've learned about this invader so that the next time we come into contact with it, we can react much faster. Your T cells are also going to take note as well because they need to get ready to destroy them with any future infected cells. And then with step three, that's going to be the real test when the virus actually shows up. Let's say that we fast forward a few months from now and suddenly that real virus shows up and we are ready for that mayhem. Instead of the virus catching our immunity off guard, the memory cells are going to recognize it instantly. Within hours, your immune system is going to start pumping out antibodies and deploying those killer T cells. This virus never gets a chance to take hold of your body. This is like your body acing an exam because it already had the answer key. And that's exactly why that people who get vaccinated either don't get sick at all or they only experience mild symptoms because their immune system already knows the enemy and wipes it out. So you might be thinking, if vaccines work so well, why do I need booster shots for some diseases but not others? The short answer to this is that some viruses are sneaky little shapeshifters. Some viruses mutate fast, especially the flu. Influenza is constantly changing its surface antigens, meaning that last year's antibodies no longer recognize this year's version. That's why the flu shot is updated every single year because it's a new training round for your immune system against the latest strands. Some vaccines, like tetanus, don't produce long-lasting memory cells, so you need a booster every 10 years to refresh your immune system's knowledge. Other diseases like measles or chickenpox, they rarely mutate, so 1 to 2 doses of that vaccine can protect you for life. So why are vaccines important? At the end of the day, vaccines give your immune system the upper hand. They train your body to fight without the risk of serious illness. They prevent breakouts of deadly diseases. And lastly, the most important is that they protect people that can't get vaccinated, like newborns and immunocompromised individuals. And let's be honest, why risk suffering through a disease when you can train your immune system in advance? Now let's test our knowledge with everything that we've learned in this video on the adaptive immune system. All right, besties, we've made it to the final showdown, the last ditch effort your body has to fight against pathogens that refuse to play fair. By now, you know that your innate immune system is your first line of defense. They are the bouncers that keep out unwanted guests. We also know that your adaptive immune system is like the archer squad, launching antibodies to neutralize threats in your body's fluids. But what happens when all those systems fail? When viruses, bacteria, or even cancer cells make it past our other defenses and start hijacking your body from the inside. That's when we unleash this elite warriors of the immune system known as T cells. This is our cell-mediated immunity, and this is where the real fight begins. Antibodies are powerful. They can neutralize toxins, flag invaders for destruction, and prevent infections from spreading. But there's one major limitation to antibodies. They can't enter our cells. So here's what's happening inside of our body. Number one is that we have a virus that's going to enter a healthy cell, slipping past all of our external defenses. Once they're inside this cell, they're going to start to hijack its machinery. They're going to force the production of more viruses like a biological factory. And then the cells are going to be unidentifiable. These infected cells look completely normal on the outside. It's still part of your body, so antibodies can't recognize it as a threat. Imagine a criminal running from the cops. As long as they're out in the open, officers can chase them down, tackle them, and arrest them. But if the criminal slips inside a locked building and disguises themselves as a worker, the police are stuck outside and they're powerless. This is exactly what happens with viruses. They hide inside our own cells, they blend in, and they avoid detection. And at this point, antibodies are useless. That's why we need to have more aggressive, specialized unit of cells to go inside that cell to take out the invader. And that's where our T cells step in. So let's start with some quick facts when it comes to our T cells. Where are they made and how are they trained? T cells are born in the bone marrow, but they mature in our thymus, hence the T in T cells, T in thymus. Think of the thymus as a military boot camp where the strongest T cells survive. During their training, T cells undergo strict screening. Those that can't recognize enemies correctly are eliminated. This will help prevent them from attacking normal, healthy cells, although sometimes things go wrong, like in autoimmune diseases where they're going to attack it anyways. So how do they actually function? Unlike B cells, T cells don't release antibodies. Instead, they directly attack infected or abnormal cells like a SWAT team breaching a building and eliminating threats inside. They patrol your blood, lymphatic systems, and tissues, ultimately scanning for signs of infection or cellular mutations. So why are these cells so important? T cells are your last line of defense. They handle infections that antibodies can't touch, like viruses hiding inside your own cells or cancer cells multiplying out of control. Without them, your immune system would be blind to these hidden dangers, leaving you completely defenseless against certain infections. The first kind of T cell that we come across is the helper T cells known as CD4+. They are the master commanders. These helper T cells are the generals of your immune system. These guys don't do the actual fighting themselves. Instead, they run an entire immune response, making sure everyone is where they need to be. When a dendritic cell or macrophage presents an antigen, these helper T cells are going to detect the enemy and sound the alarm. They're going to release cytokines, which are chemical messengers that are going to activate and direct the immune response. Next up, they're going to call in reinforcements. They're going to activate B cells, prompting them to start producing antibodies to fight infections in the blood and the tissues. They're also going to activate cytotoxic T cells by instructing them to hunt down and kill any infected or cancerous cells. And they're also going to boost up our macrophages, making them more aggressive at engulfing pathogens and cellular debris. The other cool thing that they do is they create memory cells for the future. Once an infection is handled, some helper T cells turn into memory T cells, ensuring that the immune system remembers the enemy and can react faster the next time. But here's why they're crucial. Without helper T cells, the adaptive immune system would collapse. This is why HIV and AIDS is so deadly. The virus specifically targets helper T cells shutting their immune system down entirely. Without them, B cells don't get activated, cytotoxic T cells don't get instructions, and macrophages don't get the boost that they need. No helper T cells means we're not going to have an immune response. And we talked about them a little bit before, but now we're going to talk about those cytotoxic T cells, also known as CD8 plus the assassins. These guys are our immune system's trained killers. They're our special forces, our hitmen, our snipers, whatever metaphor you want to use. Their one job is simple. They identify compromised cells and they destroy them immediately. So let's talk about their job. What do these cytotoxic T cells do? Number one is they're going to hunt down infected cells. Viruses hide inside our own cells, making them invisible to antibodies. So what cytotoxic T cells do is they scan every cell's ID badge. Remember we talked about before that MHC1 protein? They're going to scan all those to see who looks a little suspicious. If a cell shows signs of viral infection or cancer, these cytotoxic T cells are going to look into it. The next thing they're going to do is they're going to deliver a lethal hit. So once they identify an infected or cancerous cells, they don't waste time. They inject toxic enzymes known as perforin and granzymes, which blow holes in the infected cell's membranes, triggering apoptosis. And the last thing they're going to do is they're going to move on to the next target. After they eliminate one cell, cytotoxic T cells detach and continue their patrol, hunting down for more threats. But how do cytotoxic T cells know which cells are loyal citizens and which ones have gone rogue? The answer, as we talked about before, is that major histocompatibility complex protein, these self-ID badges that every cell wears. Every nucleated cell in your body carries these protein badges on their surface, displaying samples of what's inside. Why does this matter? Because healthy cells are going to have normal MHC displays. If a cell is doing its job appropriately, these MHC proteins are going to display as normal. They're healthy, they're self-proteins, which tells the immune system everything's fine here, just get to moving along. However, when it comes to infected or cancerous cells, they're going to have an altered MHC1 display. If a cell is hijacked by a virus or it's mutated because of cancer cells, the MHC1 is going to start displaying foreign or abnormal proteins. Basically, they're waving a red flag saying, "Help, I'm compromised." Your immune system has two types of MHC badges, each playing a different role in identifying threats. We're going to start with class 1, which is the help me signal. So this is going to be found on every nucleated cell inside your body except for red blood cells. Normally, it displays self-proteins, basically a status report saying, "I'm healthy, don't attack me." If a virus hijacks the cell, the infected cell is going to start displaying viral proteins on its MHC1 badge. This is going to signal those cytotoxic T cells to scan, recognize the threats, and initiate the kill sequence. These MHC class 1s is like a factory inspection system. Every cell has to show a sample of what it's producing to the immune system. If a factory is working properly, it displays safe, approved products. If a factory starts making weapons instead of legal products, then security, known as our cytotoxic T cells, are going to shut it down immediately. And then we have our MHC1 class 2, which is the look what I found cells. So who has these? Any professional antigen presenting cells, also known as APCs, like our macrophages, dendritic cells, and our B cells are going to have these. What they do is that these MHC1 class 2s are going to display antigens that are found and engulfed from outside the cell. These guys are going to attract our helper T cells, and they're going to coordinate the immune response to attack the invader. MHC class 2 is like a detective presenting evidence to the court. These antigen presenting cells are going to show pieces of a captured invader. You can think of it kind of like their mugshot. They're going to show these to those helper T cells, which in turn are then going to initiate some backup. So your immune system's job is simple. Identify what's you and what's not you. They're going to attack only the foreign invaders like viruses, bacteria, and cancer cells, and they're going to leave your healthy cells alone. But sometimes things do go horribly wrong. Instead of fighting infections, the immune system sometimes can make mistakes. They may mistake normal healthy cells for threats, leading to chronic inflammation, tissue damage, and debilitating diseases. Welcome, folks, to the world of autoimmune diseases. You can think of it as your security system kind of going haywire. Instead of only targeting the burglars, it starts attacking innocent people inside the house. Now, every time a normal cell walks through the door, the alarm systems are going to blare and the attack dogs are going to be unleashed. This is exactly what happens with autoimmune diseases. One common example we see a lot is type 1 diabetes. Cytotoxic T cells target and destroy the insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas. This means that your body cannot produce insulin, leading to high blood sugar levels and severe metabolic imbalances. But why is this dangerous? Without insulin, your body can't regulate blood sugar, leading to fatigue, weight loss, extreme thirst, and long-term organ damage. That's why type 1 diabetes needs insulin injections for life, because your immune system has wiped out their ability to make it. Another common example is multiple sclerosis. T cells attack the myelin sheath, the protective covering around our nerves. Myelin is kind of like this rubber coating on electrical wires. It insulates nerve signals and keeps them flowing smoothly. But when myelin is damaged, signals between the brain and the body become disrupted, leading to muscle weakness, vision problems, and loss of coordination. So why is this situation dangerous? With MS, it's going to cause progressive nerve damage, leading to muscle weakness, difficulty walking, and even paralysis in more severe cases. There's no cure for this, but there is treatments like immunosuppressants that are going to help slow down the immune system's attack. However, now your body can't fight infections, so really it's not great either way. And then we've got that good old rheumatoid arthritis. T cells are going to trigger an excessive inflammatory response at your joints. Instead of just healing injuries, the immune system stays in attack mode, causing chronic swelling, pain, and joint destruction. Over time, the cartilage is going to wear away, causing permanent joint deformities and disabilities. Patients are often going to need very strong anti-inflammatory drugs or even joint replacement surgeries to manage the damage. So what's the solution? We have regulatory T cells, also known as our peacekeepers. So if T cells can attack the wrong targets, what keeps them in check? That's where these regulatory T cells come into place. They're like the brakes of your immune system. What they're going to do is they're going to tell cytotoxic T cells when to stop attacking. They're going to prevent excessive inflammation, and they're going to reduce the risk of autoimmune reactions. If regulatory T cells aren't working properly, your immune system never gets the message to stop. So this can lead to a lot of chronic inflammation, pain, swelling, fatigue, organ damage when it comes to your heart, your lungs, and your brain, as well as more severe autoimmune diseases. All right, I know that was really heavy, but let's go ahead and do some practice questions to test your knowledge of everything we've learned here. Besties, we did it! From barrier defenses to antibody showers to T-cell takedowns, your immune system is truly the baddest biological boss on the block. As always, if this video helped you in some way, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. If you have any comments or questions, make sure that you leave them down below. I love answering your questions. Head over to nursecheungstore.com where you can grab access to this PowerPoint as well as any other goodies that you can find there. And as always, I'm going to catch you in the next video.